How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. So I'm glad you dropped in. Well, you know what? Yesterday we had a kind of a storm blow through. The weather guy was talking about some rain and some wind, significant rain, and wind gusts. Never thought much of it because we've often had rain like that. We had about an inch of rain. I measured on my weather station, an inch of rain. Also on my weather station, I showed you there in another video, and I'll link that down below. My wind gauge is kind of sheltered, being as how it's on the garden. But my wind gauge showed, pretty good wind all day, and around late afternoon, I had winds, sustained winds of 31 kilometers an hour for over an hour. And I'm saying 31 kilometers an hour on my gauge is pretty good amount of rain of wind, because like I say, my gauge is sheltered a lot from the wind. It's not a true indicator. But anyway, what I'm getting to is the project I have today, my temporary shelter that I just put the tarp on, the roof, a week or so ago. And I also have that video here, and I'll link that either down below or put a card up top or something. But anyways, that shelter that I was bragging so much about that it wasn't moving with all the wind we had, well, guess what? It moved. And it moved big time. It blew itself off the ground. I never saw this. I'm just kind of piecing it back together, kind of a forensic review of what happened. It blew itself up off the ground and then knocked itself on its back, on the back wall, into an old wood buck I had, broke the wood buck and put a hole in my wall. Yeah, I think I can patch the hole, and it's going to be a little bit of a job, but I can get the shelter back on the base. So I'm going to go over and just show you, before I take too much stuff out from under the shelter, exactly what transpired there last night. And then we'll take some video throughout the morning here as I try to piece it back together and make my shelter again. So let's go have a look. So there it is. The roof held up well. I was very pleased with the roof. But when we pan down here, you can sort of see a mark. Well, that concrete block right there was the corner, and then looks like a bed line right back through there. Well, that's where that sleeper was sitting on there. And then over here on the other side, kind of dark in here, but right down in there, that's where the end of that sleeper should be. So that moved back a foot. And that sleeper has never moved because that was buried pretty good into the gravel. And then you can also see that this post has kind of got a lean to it. Yeah, it looks like me on a Saturday night. But the whole shelter, like, I'm amazed with the strength of this structure in this shelter. Those posts held together well. And then back in here, right along here where I'm standing now and sighting down that line, that's the bed right there that this back sleeper is supposed to be sitting on. If you can see all that because it's so dark in here. I had a short little rebar on here to anchor this corner, this front corner. It's about 18 inches. Well, that pulled out pretty easy and rolled that big rock over. Because I think it lifted the whole shelter right up in the air. Now back here, you can see the sleeper along the back is pushed right off, and it's kind of stuck up in the air here. It's about 2 feet in the air right there. But I think this whole shelter tipped over on its back, and it fell up against that old sawbuck. And I think the top corner landed right in here somewheres and broke the buck, and then that post top right there on the buck made that hole in my wall. So anyway, it was quite an adventure, but as you see, it held up quite well. So although it was displaced from its original foundation, I'm not really displeased with how it held up. She's a rugged old piece of gear, I'm saying. So what we're up to today, I'm going to try and, I'm going to empty everything out from inside, Get it out of the way so I can work at it. And I'm going to try and get it back on its original base and level it up as best I can. The base is breaking apart right here, so I'm going to have to rethink this. So since my plan isn't working about just trying to pry it back up on its base, I'm going to have to take more drastic steps. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to let all the legs go loose from the 4x6 sleepers around the perimeter of the shelter, and just move the shelter off the perimeters, reposition the perimeters, and then move the shelter back on. So I'll show you kind of what I'm planning. If you can see right down here, each of my main posts are anchored to the 4x6 with a couple of screws in those feet. So I was going to let those screws go. But then the other thing that happens is my walls don't go all the way to the bottom. What I've done is I put little 8-inch plastic, I don't know, walls, I guess you're going to call them. Put those in there. So what I'm going to do, I have those also fastened on the outside of the shelter fastened to those. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the screws out of the bottom of those pieces. There's 2 screws in each one, so then they'll just lift up with the shelter. I think that'll work better. And then I'm hoping the shelter is flexible enough that I can just move the legs back off the 4x6s, and then I can reposition the 4x6s and then put the shelter back on it. That's the plan. Wish me luck. So there's the 2 screws that hold the feet in, if I can get at them. And of course I can't within that area. Well, I can take these screws out here though. The ones that hold those little knee walls down. I'll have to go get a manual screwdriver. Can you imagine, to take these screws out here? So I think I have everything disconnected. I'm going to try to move the shelter off the base now. See what happens. So I think what I'm going to do is go around and just jiggle those into the final position, put some screws in them, and then screw down those plastic walls and I'm done. Well, I have to patch that hole. Okay, I'll put the other 2 screws on the outside and that'll do it. There. Not too bad. The only thing now, well, I always say that, the only thing. I have to tie in those little knee walls and I have to put these ropes back on. So that's what I'm going to do now, is connect the ropes. A lot of people ask me about the knots. And a lot of people are like, if you don't know knots, tie lots. But what this is just an overhand loop I made in my rope. Then you go down around the screw, back up through the loop, tie it tight, and then just do a half hitch on it. And then, I'll show you, look. You just do a half hitch on it, and that locks it. So the tighter you pull, the tighter that gets. So it's an anti-slip knot. And the way you make the half hitch is you just pass your rope around the front, around the back, and then back through the loop you made. And there's your half hitch. So it works good, those knots. And they're easy to untie, that's what I like about them. So we just take these little knee walls, they're in sections, and I just center them in the sweeper. A couple of screws in each one are good. So just go around the perimeter and do that. There's one post. I'm not going to put the other one in until I load her up with gear. So there we have it. We're all back together. I have to put this post in, but I won't put that post in right there until after I get I put the loader off the tractor in here for the winter. So I want to put the loader in first before I put that post in, and then I'll get that post. And then the only other thing I have to do is I've got I'm going to make a couple of anchor spikes to go one here and one at that far end, and the same on the other end, just to try to hold her down again, because I don't want this walking around any more than it has to. But that's it. It was quite a surprise this morning when I come out and saw this in its deteriorated condition. But anyway, we got her back together. No harm done. So, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video of putting my shelter back together, my temporary shelter. Have shelter, will travel. I answered the age-old question today, can shelters fly? No, they can't. So anyways, like I say, thanks for watching. Hope you had a great day, and I appreciate you tuning in. Click like, click subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'd appreciate that. And we'll talk to you.